If money is your thing, then you're attached to money and you go where money goes. You rot. Moths eat you. And if money is not your thing, but heaven is your thing, God is your thing, God is your treasure, then that's where you're attached. That's where you want to be. That's where your heart is.
John Piper is absolutely right about what Jesus is teaching. If money is where our heart is, we're going to rot. And although that's blunt, it's also a very merciful thing for Jesus to say. I'm Dan Kruver. In this episode of Light and Truth, John Piper calls us to break free from the decay of misplaced treasure by setting our hearts upon God. His teaching was originally delivered at Bethlehem Baptist Church on Wednesday evening, February 13th, 1991.
That's the theme of tonight. How do you get a true treasure that will never, ever fail? That's what I want. You can have all the stuff that'll fail you want. I don't want anything that's going to wipe out on me in 80 years. I am not interested. Thank you. All the money in the world you could offer me, and if you put at the end, by the way, this will be of no use in 80 years, thank you, I'll keep looking. So this is what I want right here. And I trust Jesus. He has won my trust. And so I'm real interested in this treasure. It's not going to fail. All the richest people in the world are going to come to the end of their lives, and all the stuff they have will mean zero to them on their deathbed, and they will enter into heaven carrying nothing but what they've got in their heart, either love and faith or unbelief and unlove. And they will enter into treasure or they will enter into hell. I mean, that's just all important to me. It is of no interest to have anything less than that. Now, that makes sell your possessions and give alms very important. So how does this work? Why do these two things result in this? First answer I wrote down here was, it confirms salvation. This is where we started. It confirms salvation. It doesn't make salvation. It doesn't justify you. Now let me show you where I get this from Zacchaeus. I mean, you may remember our friend Zacchaeus from a week or two ago in chapter 19. You might want to look at this. In chapter 19, Jesus said something very important. He watched this guy. He walked into his house. Doesn't say what he said, but Zacchaeus started acting in a very strange way, namely unloading his possessions and caring about the poor suddenly. And here was Jesus' response. Verse 9 of Luke 19. Today, salvation has come to this house. Now, what he meant was, I see it. This is the way salvation looks when it's being confirmed. So that's my first answer. When you sell possessions and give alms, that is, when you're loose from money and when you care about people, when that happens, you have evidence God is real in your life. God is alive. I'm saved. I'm not phony. I'm not just playing religious games here. I'm not an Ananias and Sapphira. I'm a Barnabas type. That's my first answer. It confirms salvation. Maybe it would be helpful to look. I'm not sure exactly what Paul means, but it's very close to this in 1 Timothy 6, where he tells the rich, read this with you. In 1 Timothy 6:18, tell the rich to be rich in good deeds, liberal. I think he's just telling them, rich people act like this, okay? Use your money for caring good purposes. That's what it says in verse 18. Tell the rich to do good, be rich in good deeds, liberal and generous. Now listen to this. Here's what they're doing. Thus laying up for themselves a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of life, which is life indeed. Now that comes very close to saying what I just said, namely, when the rich act this way, they are laying a foundation for the future, eternity, and they are laying hold on life. I think that means they are living out their salvation and providing a confirmation on which they can stand in their assurance. Now, I say there's more there that we should perhaps study sometime, but when it says, do good deeds, be rich towards people and liberal, thus laying up for themselves a good foundation for the future. It's saying the same thing as verse 33, I believe. Now here's my second answer. Besides confirming salvation, I believe when we sell our possessions and give alms, we are increasing our reward in heaven. Increasing our reward. I can't make any sense out of this verse otherwise. Would you agree there's kind of an investment plan being described here? An investment plan for how to get good returns on an investment? If you want to have purses that don't grow old, and if you want to have a treasure in the heavens that doesn't fail and is never destroyed, then sell your possessions and give alms. Now, it could be all or nothing, but I would guess there's degree here instead of all or nothing. Degree, meaning those people who are, here's the way, I'm going to say this very carefully. I've thought a lot about this because degrees of reward in heaven is a real problem because we're all going to be happy, all right? I don't mean some people are going to be unhappy and some are going to be happy. Everybody in heaven is going to be happy. That's the meaning of heaven. An unhappy heaven is a contradiction in terms. But the New Testament is just shot through with discussion of rewards. Here's the way I do it. To the degree that you are satisfied by God rather than money now, you will be the more satisfied by God in heaven. Here's a little image way to put it that many of you have heard, and this isn't original with me. As we free ourselves from the world and embrace God as our portion, our cup gets bigger. The cup of blessing gets bigger. We expand our capacity to delight in what is truly valuable, God. And therefore, when we get to heaven, our cup, when it is filled, will have more in it than somebody who didn't have as big a cup because they didn't embrace God as fully. They're saved, they love God, but their delights in God were meager and didn't make the progress. They still had some hangings on, some stuff they should have pulled off. And their cup will be full. See, that's how I get out of this saying that you're going to be frustrated in heaven. Your cup will be full in heaven. But some people will have bigger cups than others. Now, there's another question I'm not sure how to answer either. I'll tell you how I think. Is can you change the size of your cup once you get there? I think so. I mean, I don't picture heaven as anything like static. I see it as life, a lot like here. Only we're all the way we should be. Only there's degrees of excellence so that I think you can grow. So don't panic, You say, oh my, I'll never have as big a cup as I'd like to have. Well, I won't either, I'm sure. I'm sure on my dying bed, I will be able to imagine a much bigger cup than I have developed over the years. And I will be then, frightened if heaven were a static place and my cup is only this big and I can imagine one this big. So God is a God of mercy, and therefore I think we're going to have an eternity to enlarge our cup. In fact, what's exciting to think about in heaven is that our capacities to enjoy God increase forever. It never come to an end, because God never is exhausted in the rivers of His delights that keep flowing from Him. What I know this says is there's a real strong connection between your freeing yourself from possessions and your caring about people who need alms. And that connection is that it gives you real riches. So the answer to tonight's question, how do you get really rich, is by making sure you don't count money as your riches here. Develop a looseness from it. I'm talking fundamentally here of a very profound spiritual transaction that shows itself in practical realities, but the most important thing is the spiritual transaction of detachment. Let me read a section about detachment. This text blows you away. It's 1 Corinthians 7. Here's Paul describing Christian detachment. The appointed time is grown very short. Let those who have wives live as though they had none. And those who mourn as though they were not mourning. And those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing. And those who buy as though they had no goods. Isn't that amazing? Go ahead and buy. You got to buy, but buy as though you had no goods. I'm reading at verse 31. And those who deal with the world, you got to do that, as though they had no dealings with it. For the form of this world is passing away. Now that is Christian, paradoxical, world involvement detached. He didn't say divorce your wife. He said, relate to her in such a way that when you lose her, you do not lose all. I think that's what he means. Relate to her in such a way that you are giving, loving, caring, tender, and when she's gone, you've still got your treasure. Relate to your house that way. Relate to your vacations and your money and your health that way. Relate to your children that way. Now, I just read something the other night that just blew me away. It was talking about the complexity of emotions. Many people on their deathbed, many saints on their deathbed have said that they feel at that moment the sweetest, deepest love for their relatives, and yet the most precious readiness to let them go because of a rising love for Christ. Now, most of us feel like those are at odds with each other. If you're free to fly away and you love Christ and you're ready to go, everything in us tends to say, well, then you must be loving less those you're leaving behind. Because if you didn't, then you'd be torn in half. But in fact, many of the saints, this book was saying, have borne witness that right in that moment, the miracle happened, that the love was most intense towards the wife and children and most ready to go to be with Jesus. And I just tasted enough of that to know that that must be possible. Verse 34, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. That's a baffling verse to me. The best I can do with it is something like this. Where you are cultivating your investments, where you are laying up store, you are showing where your love is, where your heart is. If money is your thing, then you're attached to money and you go where money goes. You rot. Moths eat you. And if money is not your thing, but heaven is your thing, God is your thing, God is your treasure, then that's where you're attached. That's where you want to be. That's where your heart is. And that's where you'll be. That's where you'll go. In his culture, as he looked around, if you had a bag in which you were to carry your belongings and it was rotting out at the bottom, you would lose your belongings. So you don't want that to hold your final belongings. You don't want it to hold your treasure. It's no good. And the same thing with treasure. If treasure fails, or if it gets stolen, or if a moth eats it, you've got nothing. So these are just graphic ways of saying, my heart needs a treasure. It isn't the treasure. My heart needs God. I got to Xerox a page from Jonathan Edwards for you. He's got this awesome page about how we will relate to one another in diversity in heaven. I mean, take the parable of in the kingdom, you will be over 10 cities and I'll be over 5 cities. Because you took the talent and made 10 more and I took it and made 5 more. Am I supposed to resent you for that? You know what? He says, it's almost paradoxical. He says, I will be so full of love, so Christ-like, I'll be thrilled that you're ahead of me. It will increase my joy that you're ahead of me in joy. Fix that one. That's right. That's right. It will increase my joy that you're ahead of me in joy. And your joy for me at being behind you will give you an opportunity for dimensions of mercy. That if I were exactly a carbon copy of you, you couldn't have the pleasure of bestowing upon me unusual favors, inviting me over to one of your 10 cities that I don't. I mean, really, heaven has potentials of handling these little problems that we have. And the way to fight is not, I think, to call into question the distinctions that may not be here, but are definitely elsewhere. I saw one other hand, then I'm going to move on. John? Now that's a really good question. The question is, if the heart follows the treasure, is one way to put the heart somewhere or to increase the heart's pursuit to go ahead and in a disciplined way put your treasure there, even before the heart is there, you're asking. And I can remember my loudest sentence on Sunday, at least in one of the services. If your heart doesn't move you to bring it, don't bring it. Remember? And now you're asking me a very good question. Now, I got an answer for it because I answered it in Desiring God when people asked me, are you really telling us that we shouldn't do anything we don't enjoy doing? I mean, that question just comes up over and over again for a Christian hedonist. And the answer is, there is a way to do a thing you don't fully enjoy that is different from a hypocritical way of doing it. You can have 2 people sitting in the pew, both feeling disinclined to put in their tithe. Disinclined. And one puts it in as an Ananias, a sheer hypocrite, wanting to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, even God's. The other one doesn't put it in like that, but puts it in like this. Here's the mental transaction. Father, right now, I can imagine a lot I'd like to spend this money on besides that building or these pastor salaries or this ministry or whatever. In fact, I need this to pay a bill. But Lord, I believe it's your will for me to put it in. Forgive me for not having a heart more inclined, and help me now in the putting of it in to experience what I ought to experience, namely freedom and joy. Now that's, I think, what you're suggesting. And therefore my answer to your question is yes. If you're willing to go through that sequence of thought, which is not a hypocritical sequence of thought, it's an authentic sequence of thought, then yes, it's just like many have said, psychologists know this, wise people know it. To act a certain way often brings the heart that way. Going to the hospital when you don't feel like it, as a pastor, often brings the heart with you. Sometimes in the elevator, sometimes walking into the room, sometimes after you're into the conversation, the heart comes and the compassion comes. You didn't feel it before. It was your job. You had to do it. You did it. You repented. You wished you had the feelings. You didn't. You did it anyway, praying that the feelings would come, and they come. I think that's a very profound thing. to not for hypocritical means, not for show, but to bring the heart along in tremendous desire that we be authentic.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Light and Truth, where we are committed to providing God-centered teaching to help you see Christ clearly and treasure Him truly. I'm your host, Dan Kruver. On our next episode, John Piper concludes our three-part series, True Riches That Last, with a teaching titled, Investing in Eternal Habitations. I hope you'll join us. For more resources, visit desiringgod.org.